Good morning. Welcome to the Peorian. I'm your host, Paul Gordon. Real estate sales have long been considered a good indicator of the economy, be it national, state, or local. When the economy is strong, people are confident about spending money and are more willing to put themselves out on that 15 to 30-year limb known as a mortgage. Existing homeowners feel they can afford more than they already have, so they move up. First-time home buyers enter the market and new construction increases. Conversely, when the economy sours, consumers may lose their jobs and thus their ability to pay their mortgage. Those who keep jobs are more reluctant to spend their money, and as we've seen in the last few years, banks become more wary of loaning money. New home construction drives up quickly in that kind of scenario. The Peoria area was not immune to the recession by any means, but it did fare better than many other U.S. markets, including in real estate sales. Still, sales are down here, and it seems the recovery is taking its time. The Peoria Area Association of Realtors recently unveiled the 2011 sales numbers, and while they were not great, they did show some signs of stability, or so says the organization. My guest today is Laura Martin, president of the association, and we'll discuss those numbers and other matters of real estate after these messages. Welcome back to the Peorian. My guest today is Laura Martin, president of the Peoria Area Association of Realtors. Laura, thank you for joining us today. The numbers show that sales declined 2.5% in 2011 from the previous year. But they also show that the rate of the decline has slowed again.
It has.
Okay. But what are we to make of that? What does that say about the local economy, at least in the eyes of realtors?
We watched those numbers really closely. And it was the shortest decline since 2006. And the fourth quarter of 2011 showed a gain of closed sales of 1.9%.
From the previous year?
From the previous year.
Okay.
And that's encouraging. And so we play that cautiously optimistic card where we want to watch the first quarter of 2012 and get an accumulation of 2 different quarters to kind of show us if things are moving up. There's other indicators as well, though, Paul.
So what you're seeing then is the situation stabilizing?
We do.
Okay. Could this be that in the last 6 years that our local market has been in a correcting itself? You went from those incredible growth years, I think it was like 9 out of 10 years, to the record number in, I believe it's 2005 or 6, 2006 I believe it was, over 6,100 homes were sold, to this decline. The 6 years before the crash, it would have been difficult to sustain those kind of numbers for much longer, wouldn't it?
And over the last 33 years, those are the only years that we saw a slow incline. There was no year that was really drastic between the next in that growth, okay, or that boom of 6 years. And so we are sort of correcting ourselves. But our area, real estate's local, and our area is fairly conservative. It shows in being ranked 8 out of the top 10 cities in the Midwest having the best credit scores. You see it in the economy with the new growth at some of the different industries in town, unemployment rates being down. Those are all stabilizing factors.
What about interest rates that people are paying locally?
Absolutely. Those are, historical lows,
okay,
around the 4% mark for a 30-year fix, depending on your credit rate. So we're seeing, those are all factors that play into that as well, which just goes to show we had conservative lenders. We didn't have lenders in our area as much in the subprime as we had. They were more conservative, and so you still had to qualify for a loan, even in those boom days.
Mm-hmm. Should we be surprised that, given the sales are still on a decline, granted a slower decline, but they're still declining, should we therefore be surprised if the average price continues to go up?
And it's been minute. It's been very small. I think it was like 0.3 from 2010 at $136,000 on average to about 137-ish in there. It was pretty small. The thing that we also look at, though, too, is we look at our inventory.
Okay.
Because it is a buyer's market right now. I mean,
Okay.
it is. And the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market is about when you have 5 to 6 months of inventory, that stabilizes. It's a more even market. And we're at about 6.7 months worth of inventory right now.
Can you explain what you mean by you're
Inventory?
at 6 months of inventory?
Okay.
Are you saying that if another house did not get listed for the next 6 months, that the houses that are currently in the inventory would sell out?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Yep, that's exactly it. And we use what's called an absorption rate, just like you would any product. There's supply and demand, right? So in a buyer's market, there's more houses than there are buyers. In a seller's market, there's less houses than there are buyers. In a stable, even market, there's enough houses for as many buyers, and so it starts to even up. That's another sign that our local economy is turning around.
We're seeing it even up. Is that
We
what
are,
you're saying?
yes, because if it's the 5 to 6 month range that
Yes.
makes it stable, and we're at 6.7, we're headed right into that range now.
Okay. Do you pay attention to the price ranges of the inventory?
Somewhat. It varies. Real estate can be so local that it can be not only down to the town, but down to the subdivision.
Okay.
And so it depends. Certain towns have different price ranges that are doing better than other price ranges. Usually you see your first-time home buyer coming into the market, so that $75,000 to $100,000 range usually is very steady. We don't have that stimulus money that we had in the past, and so that has slowed down somewhat. What you're really seeing is people that own homes currently moving up to their next house.
Okay.
With these kind of interest rates, you get so much more home. You get, if you were to double it to 8%, which I believe is like the average over the last 30 years, to be honest, $100,000 more house. So you're getting a lot more house for your money at this interest rate, and so people are ready to make that move for their families.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this buyer's market versus seller's markets. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Peorian. I'm with Laura Martin, president of the Peoria Area Association of Realtors. Laura, right before the break, we were talking about the difference between a seller's market and a buyer's market. You gave a couple differences. Let me run something by you here. Correct me if I'm wrong or being too simplistic. But isn't it what makes a buyer's market? Is it another factor in a buyer's market? A good inventory and reasonably low prices? Because right now, and a low interest rate, of course, helps. Right now, we've got declining inventory and rising prices. How can that be a buyer's market? Please.
Okay. Buyers determine the value of property.
Okay.
We're here as realtors, we are watching how the sales are going to know how to price a house correctly. And so you really need to talk with the realtor as a seller and as a buyer, both, to watch exactly what is happening with that particular trend in that neighborhood. So if you see that the house price is going up a little bit, obviously that would mean also that inventory is coming down a little bit. It's all about the statistics of it. So if we are correcting the market and we're pricing them correctly, that means you're going to sell your house closer to the asking price because it's been corrected. The value, the buyer's finding the value and making the purchase. Does that make sense?
To a degree.
Okay.
But if a buyer is the one dictating the market, dictating the price. Again, see, that's throwing me off. If the buyer has more to say about what the price is going to be than the seller, why are we seeing prices go up if it's a buyer's market?
Because there's more than one buyer. If I have 5 buyers that all want the same house, they're going to determine where they see the value in that house. And lately, I've had multiple offers on houses, which drives the price a little bit higher.
Okay.
And so then they close higher. And so, if you have many buyers and they all find value with the same house, that stabilizes the price and it sells for higher.
Why do you think inventory has fallen?
I think that there have been some great opportunities for buyers out there. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of new construction when, the perceived economy started slowing down, mm-hmm. and that was done on a national level, more so than a local level. We've always been the tortoise here, not the hare. And so when we say gains, our gains are much more modest than, let's say, Las Vegas or Arizona. And that's what I would attribute that to.
Being the tortoise has served us well, right?
It really has, which just goes to show we're more fiscally responsible and conservative here.
Okay.
We just always have been.
You mentioned in the earlier segment, too, about first-time home buyers. There was a glut of them when we had the low interest rates combined with the
stimulus
money. Has that slowed considerably?
It has. It has. And also, because more people are renting, it's a better opportunity to buy because you can buy and have your monthly payment be much more affordable than what you can rent for.
Okay.
Because there's so many renters out there, and a lot of those renters, for whatever reason, have good credit scores and are waiting to see what's going to happen, which comes back down to consumer confidence. Mm-hmm. They have the credit rate, they probably have the down payment, and they're just waiting to see what happens. Well, once they put their toe in and they see, wow, I can own a house and build equity in that house, then rent, now they're starting to move into the market.
How much of a factor comes into play, especially for the first-time buyer? Do they ever just worry about, am I ever going to sell it again if the market tanks? Does that ever come into play?
Not in our area.
Okay.
We just don't have, like I said, those kind of drops or those kind of gains. So, you're staying in your house 3 to 5 years, mm-hmm. It's probably going to be a 1 to 3% increase.
Okay. We're going to take a break now for messages from our sponsors, but first here is the Peorian's own Kevin Kaiser to talk about what's going on in the literary and culinary world.
Hey, it's your faithful literary mutt, Kevin here to let you into my little world. Well, 2012 is a big year in politics with another election just around the corner. So this week I decided to talk about the best political books, both fiction and nonfiction. To start off with Lincoln by Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal is a name many readers are familiar with. Over the years, his Narratives of Empire series have spanned the history of the United States from the Revolution to post-World War II years, utilizing both historical and fictional characters. In Vidal's Lincoln, the 16th president faces deep personal turmoil over the Civil War, the loss of his dearest son, and a nagging wife who has been accused of being a traitor because of her Southern connections. Another great political book is The Making of the President, 1960, which you might be surprised to find out is filled with recipes for quiche. Actually, it's the book that modernized political journalism, as the author, Theodore White, had intimate access to Senator John F. Kennedy and Vice President Richard Nixon. It ended up being the first part in White's 4-volume narrative history of American politics in action. Definitely worth checking out if you're a political junkie. Speaking of junkies, our next book is Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72 by Hunter S. Thompson. Just like White before him, Hunter changed the face of political journalism with this book. His deconstruction of the campaigns of South Dakota Senator George McGovern and President Nixon proved to be eerily prophetic. Hunter harbored a basic hatred for typical politicians, but became quickly enamored of McGovern, who became a lifelong friend. Also during the election, Thompson developed a strange friendship with a young Republican speechwriter named Pat Buchanan. Even though they were polar opposites in terms of philosophy, they both respected the fact that each of them could leave it on the field, so to speak, and go get drunk without killing each other. In the end, McGovern lost in a landslide, but Thompson turned out what might be the most insightful piece ever written on a presidential election. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, What I Saw at the Revolution, A Political Life in the Reagan Era by conservative writer Peggy Noonan. This critically acclaimed bestseller charts her day as a special assistant and speechwriter to the president. She paints vivid portraits, with words, not paint, of Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and other figures inside and outside the administration. Her account broke the mold of the typical Washington memoir and is an engaging read no matter what side of the political spectrum you reside upon. So there you have it, the best political books to check out this year, according to me. Now go out and get politically literary or politerary. See you next week.
We're back talking about the local real estate market with Laura Martin, president of the Peoria Area Association of Realtors. Laura, get out your crystal ball.
Okay.
What are we going to see for the rest of 2012?
Well, we look back at the fourth quarter results to kind of help us determine what's going to happen at the end of the first quarter.
Okay.
When we see that stable and we see that increase, like we had the increase in the fourth quarter, that's going to give us more confidence. Smooth sailing is slowly moving back upstream again.
Okay, when you say the increase in the fourth quarter, you're talking again, the increase, was that from year to year or an increase from the third quarter or both?
It's an increase from the fourth quarter of 2010.
How much of an increase was there again?
1.9%.
How significant is that? Is any increase significant?
You know, you hear everywhere that flat is the new growth.
I've heard that, yes.
And so that's how we're looking at it the same way.
Can you tell anything in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the year or the first month of the year how the first quarter is going to go?
You know, just walking around the office and talking to other realtors, as well as my own business, we definitely are headed in the right direction. Very busy. Haven't had a day off since the beginning of the year.
Well, the mild winter that we're having so far has
that
to
really
help.
helps. Yeah, that helps.
How big a factor is weather?
I think it does affect people, especially if you're starting a new construction site. They're working. You know, if you go to any of these new subdivisions, you'll see them out there working away. In past years when there's a lot of snow, you don't see that happening.
What is the situation with new home construction?
You know, what we're really experiencing is what we call built to suit, a lot more of that. And we're seeing developers create their own inventory so that people have some choices. So there's not as many spec homes or speculative homes that people can purchase. More people are choosing their builder and their own plan and doing their building right now.
What kind of forecasts are you hearing, are you making regarding interest rates?
We hear that they're going to stay stable for the rest of the year, at least through election time. And also the state is seeing some growth commercially, especially up by the Chicago area, and we are here a little bit. And so once you see commercial real estate start to turn over and businesses starting to come into play again, that's a good sign that we're headed back again from the downward turn we had.
What commercial real estate are we seeing move around here?
Well, we're seeing slowly people are watching some of the downtown area. You heard about the TIF money that OSF. That's going to be a big player. The warehouse district is another area. So just slowly, things are starting to turn again. Okay.
You mentioned through the election that you hear that the interest rates are going to stay stable through the election. Do presidential elections or presidential election years seem to have any special effect on housing sales normally?
Typically, nobody wants to move around interest rates at that time. So that's always a good time to, you know things are going to stay stable. So if you've got to put your house on the market to, and get it sold before you move on to the next one, great time to do it as well. So if you're moving on to your next house, because usually things just stay pretty stable right now.
What about confidence levels? If we have a president who his approval rating is coming up, the economy is starting to rise again, does that help confidence levels for
Absolutely.
A potential buyer?
I think it does. I think, perception is reality for most people. And so it always is going to come down to consumer confidence. And if they see, their retirement portfolio stabilizing, that is always a sign. If they see that they have a job, they're getting raises, the government is playing nicely, those are things that make people feel comfortable and don't think that anything volatile is going to happen. So when you have that, it's really media driven. It's up to you, Paul.
Okay. When it gets closer to the time of the election, we've got a presidential election. We do have an incumbent running, and then we've got this turmoil in Congress that a lot of people say every congressman out there is vulnerable because of this. That's got to hurt consumer confidence, or at least maybe not hurt it, but it's got to make people a little more nervous.
Well, if you see where the economy has gone, the economy started that downward turn prior to this leadership that's in there now. And so who's in there, I don't think affects things near as much as being stable on both sides, just like you said. It needs to be stable on both sides. And so it will depend. It's been interesting, I find, over the last few years. Everybody seems to be going back and forth on how they feel about what's going on. And depending on, who's in office and what kind of drama is going on there. So I think everyone's been kind of putting their toe in and just watching to see what happens.
And you think consumer confidence is coming up, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. As things get quiet.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today, Laura.
Thanks for inviting me.
Remember, people, you can see this episode in its entirety on our website, thepeorian.com. Join us next Sunday here at 8 a.m. on WHOI for another episode of The Peorian. Have a good week.
Música